Recording and
Time now for Inside Utah Politics with Lindsay Aerts.
Well, welcome in to our News for Utah Plus app. We appreciate you being here today. This is our weekly streaming show where we talk about, hash out, debate, discuss issues related to Utah, political issues, and the nation as well. So we're glad you're here. We're glad to have our panelists today. So joining me, Rusty Cannon and Sarah Reale. Rusty, tell us who you are real fast.
President and Chief Advocacy Officer with the Utah Credit Union Association.
Chief Advocacy Officer.
Yes.
What does that mean? What do you
sound
do?
okay? I advocate.
It sounds like you're a big
Yes,
deal. Does that mean a lobbyist?
Yes, lobbyist,
Okay.
government relations, state
it.
and federal level for Utah's credit unions.
Okay, got it. Sarah?
I am on the State Board of Education representing District 5, and I'm an adjunct political science professor at Salt Lake Community College.
Love that. Want to point out that neither of you speak for your organizations, right?
Correct.
You
Do
are
not.
here on your own behalf and speaking on behalf of yourselves, so we appreciate your thoughts today. All right, let's start here locally. Utah's Democrats have a big decision to make this weekend. They'll be electing new party leadership, including a new party chair. We have talked to a couple of the candidates who are running, Brian King and Ben Peck. Brian King, of course, former lawmaker here, longtime lawmaker here in Utah. Ben Peck has run a couple of campaigns here locally for Salt Lake County Democrats. There are two other candidates, Archie Williams and Jonathan Lopez, who each did not respond to our request to come on our show last week, so we have not heard from them. But Sarah, let me start with you. As a Democrat in the state of Utah, what does your party need to do here as far as, you haven't won a statewide race in 4 decades,
Yeah.
so how do you fix that?
We have a lot of work to do, and I don't think you'll find anyone more critical of the party than me. And I'm hoping that this election, we've gotten a lot of excitement. There seems to be a lot of enthusiasm, which we don't often see. A lot of folks getting reinvigorated, a lot of new folks getting excited about the party elections. And so what I hope to see is a lot of change, reevaluating, re-strategizing, and being more effective in the ways that we can be, like in Salt Lake County, and less emphasis on races that we just can't win at this point.
Rusty, what do you see for the Democrats?
I see-
have at them. Come on
No,
now.
in all fairness, though, it's just interesting to see. I'm always curious to ask, too, well, you guys have the same issues that we do, at our convention, where you
Yeah.
have maybe some polar extremes pulling, in your case, pulling everyone to the left, in our case, pulling to the right, and kind of pushing back and forth on that. It's almost similar, very similar, but
Yeah.
also, obviously ideologically very different. There's also an interesting age issue here with Brian King. Sorry, I'm calling Brian King
Sure.
old.
Yeah, of course you are.
Yeah.
That's fine.
And a
No.
younger candidate.
25 years old.
25
Yeah.
years old. That's awesome. Having someone young come in. I'm curious if Democrats would look to that for new leadership, or maybe, and Brian King's done a lot through the years, if they kind of stick more with familiar knitting. I don't know.
The question is do we want stability or do we want to shake up? But I think that Brian King could also bring a little bit of a shake up too. So I just think it's about, we need to reorganize. We need a better foundation. The party right now really has like 2 employees, which is wild. We cannot be efficient that way. We cannot be effective that way. So it is time. I would like to see a shakeup, and I would just like to see a lot of change and really trying to better strategize, because right now our strategy has not been working.
What is the strategy? I mean, how do Democrats effectively message to Utahns?
I think that not necessarily leaning more moderate in their policies, but moderate in the politics. Meaning, extremism is not we're not seeing extremism win as much in Utah. I think people are just looking for someone who will listen, who is middle of the line. They could pull a lot of Republicans over by being more of a moderate Mitt Romney or type, like a Becky Edwards type candidate. If the Democrats can find folks like that can relate to both sides and get the vitriol out, I think people are really looking for that, and I'd like to see more of that.
Rusty, Democrats nationally are facing a bit of an identity crisis post the 2024 election, right? Where they don't seem to have a party leader at this point. They don't seem to have somebody that they're coalescing behind. Although J.B. Pritzker out of Illinois is coming to speak to the Democrats, and he's been sort of seen as one of those potential figures in 2028, maybe, although he's also mulling another re-election run in Illinois. So I guess the question is sort of like, as they're facing this national identity crisis, if you will, how do they capitalize on those local gains? I mean, I know you don't want them to, but like,
Well,
from politically, what do they do here? I mean,
Here
how
in
do
Utah specifically?
Yeah.
Well, I think Sarah makes a good point. The very effective legislators that like I've seen on the Hill here in Utah, Karen Maine is an example, extremely effective, got a ton of bills passed, knew how to work across the aisle in a softer tone. You have just one in particular I'm thinking of, I won't use his name, completely
We know who
ineffective.
you're thinking of, it's
Completely ineffective, and all you're doing is throwing bombs and making everybody angry. And you wonder why none of your bills pass. Well, okay, I'll tell you why. But I think there's a lane in the middle that Utah Democrats could fill that could, I think, attract a lot of disaffected Republicans. In kind of that middle of the road voter here in Utah, I think the Democrats actually have a good chance of making some significant gains through the years. Nationally right now, I think, just my opinion, I think it's somewhat rudderless, but I think you do have quite a bit of time before 2028 to have a robust primary process, of which you didn't have at all in this last election, right? I mean, let's admit it. It was just more of a show, and
Here's
just
who
all of a
will
sudden,
be
who will be
running.
run? Oh wait, not him. Let's do her. And so that just, if you have a robust primary process where you have that refining fire, hopefully a good candidate can come out of it. Maybe a Shapiro out of Pennsylvania or Pritzker or somebody
Gretchen
that can
Whitmer
fit.
is my
Gretchen,
pick.
is she your favorite?
Yep.
Those, I think, like an AOC Bernie type is a little too extreme as far as winning a general
To
election. But I
Sarah's
could be
point
wrong.
that maybe the Democrats are polarizing a little bit and pulling farther to
I think
the
they have the
left.
same issue that Republicans have. Is you just have those polarizing forces that just tough to manage.
But it seems like the polarizing is working for the Republicans because y'all are in all the powers right now.
Yeah, but don't kid yourself to think that there's not tension back and forth behind closed doors as to what the Trump administration is doing, say on tariffs or other things where people are pretty upset. And you saw the president's ratings just tank a couple of months ago, or how long has it been now? A month or two ago, when really those tariffs were just not looking good. It's risen a little bit now, but there is a ton of back and forth behind the scenes of, okay, knock it off. If we go into the fall with this issue still hanging over us, you're going to hurt some people as we get into the midterm elections, and Republicans aren't going to stand for it. So don't kid yourself to think that we're all getting along just because we have the House, Senate, and President. There is a ton of back and forth and irritation.
Sarah, what do you hope? And sorry that you have a cough
I am
today.
sorry
and I'm
to
so
everyone.
No, I'm so sorry that we made you work when you're not feeling
You're
well.
right.
What do you see the need for the message from Pritzker as he comes to deliver that message to Utah Democrats?
I like him. He gave one really good speech that inspired a lot of people.
Sorry.
Well,
Poor girl.
while I give her a minute, I was going to ask if you've heard him speak before, which you kind of answered. I don't know a whole lot about him. Illinois governor and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
but
we're gonna let her
we're gonna
cough it
totally
out.
let her
We're
cough
gonna-
it out.
we're gonna
and
let
do
her
that.
cough it out. It's fine.
But I will continue and just
Yeah.
talk about. I think a good headliner, whether it's at the Democrat convention or the Republican convention in Utah, can sort of set the tone. Like you saw that was it 2 years ago? I'm losing track of time.
Yeah.
When DeSantis came.
Yeah.
And he was having a lot of momentum. I think he can make a difference. So if Pritzker comes and does a great job speaking, maybe it's a galvanizing force.
Sure, just galvanizes people a little
Yeah.
bit. Okay, let's move to this while we wait for Sarah to come back. I want to talk to you, Rusty, about an issue that's happening here locally, mainly among the Republicans, and that is this issue of signature verification. We saw some issues in the primary that happened with Governor Cox's campaign. A couple of audits have come out that said, look, signatures are subjective. There were some errors and error rates that we found, both legislative auditors and state auditors, in the signatures, but the audits ultimately found that Cox qualified because he would have gathered plenty of signatures, right? And stopped counting once he had met the thresholds, which he is required of all of him.
Yeah.
Now, there are still allegations that he is an illegitimate candidate and didn't get enough signatures. I haven't seen a ton of evidence supporting that. But recently there was a legislative hearing where we sort of rehashed all these issues. And the purpose of it was to offer some suggestions on ways we can fix the signature verification process. But after that meeting, now we're seeing the lieutenant governor get some death threats, basically people accusing her of defrauding the election. I mean, what do you make of this issue still bubbling up after a year after the primary election? And then, I mean, how do we move past this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll answer that in two pieces. First of all, the threats to the lieutenant governor, those are ridiculous, wrong. A lot of people take too much leeway on social media because it's a bit of an echo chamber. You kind of say and do what you want, and it gets quite extreme quite fast. Regardless of where it is, it's wrong. Our lieutenant governor, has done a phenomenal job and has to manage quite a bit, I should say, of security threats, and it's ridiculous. And there's no place for that. I think the problem with the issue itself on signature verification, the system was a little bit broken in that when you get to that in the case of the governor, 28,000 signature threshold, and they get to 28,005 and they stop counting, I think that was the problem. If they would have maybe added more time, say, okay, let's count an extra 1,000 signatures, because he had thousands more to submit, and he could have submitted them. But under the system he was under, he doesn't run it, okay, we got to your 28,005, we're going to move on. Well, now if you nitpick, well, if we had so many of these different signatures that were invalid and somebody got it wrong, he's below the 28. Well, you can make up a case like that anytime you want. But that's not they could have submitted a bunch more. So I think the argument that he was somehow illegitimate is not only old, it's tired, it has run its course, you just need to get over it. And I think it's worth remembering, a candidate for governor that started to gather signatures was Phil Lyman. And it's most of his followers that are just saying, hey, they're beating this drum. That is absolute hypocrisy, first of all. And not only that, you're just wrong. And I think we're all tired of it, and it just needs to go away.
Yeah. Part of this issue here is the oversight that the lieutenant governor has over the election process, right? She's the chief elections administrator, right? So the buck stops with her when it comes to all things election security. Now she contracts with the Davis County Clerk's office, right? Her office does. So they're the ones who are validating the signatures. But what happened was there were some fraudulent signatures that got flagged in Davis County. Those got sent off to the LG's office, who then sent them to the AG's office to investigate. 11 people have faced charges for those as a result, right? And so, but then there's allegations in there that some of the fraudulent signatures may have made it onto Cox's packet. But again, I haven't seen the evidence of that. So I don't know where we go from here, short of someone coming
Welcome
out
back.
casually.
You okay?
I am
Okay.
so
gracious,
sorry,
I
Sarah.
apologize.
I think, again, where the system could be improved is then you need to allow for the overshooting, so that as they're counting, you go well above the mark. So if they're you whatever percent margin of error you want to have in there, you overcount, and then all this stuff goes away, because like, well, listen, we went so far over the hurdle, there's really no issue. On the fraud, there are some ways that, yes, if you're having paid signature gathering, in that case, someone is motivated to commit fraud and submit packets so they can get paid, that's going to happen. And maybe there's a way to just not have that happen anymore.
Yeah, and that meeting discussed some of those changes and possibilities. Sarah, I'll give you a chance to weigh in if you want on this signature gathering issue that's mostly bubbling up against this Phil Lyman crowd.
Yeah, my cough and I will just add.
Right.
That I just hope that people speak up and talk about how inappropriate it is that there are folks out there saying such terrible things to our lieutenant governor. She doesn't deserve that. Our elections are secure and the process is secure, and I think that it's really inappropriate, and I hope that it discontinues and folks stand up and say, this is not okay.
And let me just touch on that really quick. There's like a legal definition of what constitutes a threat against someone, right? And a lot of it is protected speech, right? So even though we're seeing posts of nooses and we're seeing people say execution is an appropriate punishment, right? Those aren't necessarily considered death threats, quote unquote, but what else do you call them if they're not threats?
It's ridiculous. I mean, you can try to parse and say, no, it wasn't that bad. It's bad enough. It should not happen. As Sarah said, she has been subject to so much vitriol that she has not deserved. And when it crosses the line, which I think these have certainly crossed the line, it's wrong. It needs to stop. And I think people should be held to account for it.
Okay, let's switch to some national news before we wrap up here. Just in the last few days, President Trump's tariffs have been deemed illegal by a 3-panel judge. This is the trade court, right? That all of us had to Google. Don't worry. We all had to Google what the trade court does and what they weigh in on, because we rarely hear from them, right? Rusty, I'll start with you.
It's a big year for trade courts.
Trade courts are having a moment,
Yes,
okay?
they're having their moment.
It won't last long.
No.
Did the trade court get it right here? What's the question at stake, and where does this go from here? What's the impact on tariffs right now?
Well, I think the trade court got it right. And as much as the president and his team might cry foul of activist judges and all that, I don't think that holds water. we were all glad for activist judges in our camp last summer when a judge stopped Biden and his student loan forgiveness thing. It's like you can't have it both ways. So first of all, I think the court is right. I think the tariff policies are wrong. I think the president needed to fire Peter Navarro long ago. He's giving him terrible advice. I think this whole tariff thing is bad. But what the court is saying is, for the most part, this is not a national emergency in specific cases, and you don't have this authority. He can't just decide in his second term, all of a sudden it's a national emergency, and I'm going to therefore have the authority to do these tariffs. I agree with the court. I think this, if the president appeals, I think they'll continue to lose on appeal on this. It does keep in place some of the other ones.
Right.
It was just specific to one act of Congress. So this doesn't stop all of his tariffs, just some.
Right.
Yeah.
Sarah, how do you see this issue? I mean, did the president, do you think he's overstepping his powers here, or does he have the ability to implement these tariffs?
Well, I think it's a precedent, right? And we have this beautiful republic. We have this Constitution's checks and balances, these, separation of powers. I love it. And when I see things in this administration, when I see that balance shifting, it worries me, regardless of whatever the policy is, regardless of what the the topic is that is in the court. And so I'm glad that the court went the way it did. But I also just worry, like, what does that mean? Is Congress going to step in? Is the president going to keep pushing? Is he going to do it anyhow? Like, where does that go? And that's the things that start worrying me.
Don't hold your breath as far as Congress stepping in and doing something significant. They can't decide what day of the week it is.
Speaking of Congress stepping in, we've seen some calls right now for Congress to codify the Doge cuts as we see Elon Musk exit Doge, right? This was, according to the administration, his planned exit after like 130, 150 days, something like that. But he also was critical of the Trump big beautiful bill and the spending package and not codifying any of those Doge cuts. Rusty, where does Doge go from here without Elon at the helm?
Well, I think if Congress enacts a rescissions package, which today it was reported that they would likely forward something, the White House would forward something. I think Congress will pass it. It's a ridiculously laughable small amount of money. It's like $9 billion. Now that's a lot of money, but in the federal budget, in this whole $1 trillion goal, it's laughable. But at least it's something, and I think at least Doge opened up conversations about some things that needed to be talked about. For me personally, it was USAID. I was shocked at some of the stuff going on there. If that's all we get out of it, fine. I think Elon Musk took a lot of heat, I think unfairly, but I mean, come on. It's not like he's poor,
but if the
he's just
Democrats
fine.
were having an unelected bureaucrat,
oh, we'd be livid.
You would be so mad.
Replace that with George Soros or something. We'd be losing our mind, and I understand that. But the good part about it, I think, from the president's point of view, is that he became the boogeyman. He's out. Problem solved.
Okay, interesting. How do you see it, Sarah?
It's not a bad strategy in that sense. I've worked the state of Utah basically my entire career in higher ed, and it's really interesting when you see people from the private sector come in and be like, why can't we just use our card to go buy dinner? Or why can't we? Being in government is a lot of red tape and it's a lot of bureaucracy, right? And sometimes that's intentional so that we are using taxpayer dollars, in appropriate ways, and that we're following protocol and we're having a process in place. It's good to mix it up, like to kind of like go in and have Doge mix it up and reveal a lot of different things. But I don't think that that's the way I want my government to be run. That's not the way I want to be assessing and analyzing what needs to be cut. And so I think that we shook it up, and we'll see where it goes from here. I think it might kind of trickle out as look at all the things we did, and now, we're going to go back to the bureaucracy and the red tape and all the processes.
Speaking of cuts, the big beautiful bill is still kind of lingering out there in the background, right? The House has passed it. The Senate will get their hands on it and likely make some changes to it. Rusty, I know as you and I have texted about this, you've said there's some, I think you called them misinformation about the big beautiful bill that you believe is happening out there, specifically related to Medicaid.
Yeah, I think Republicans got off message and have lost the messaging war so far in allowing it to be called a cut to Medicaid. When if you look at the specifics, what they're doing is putting work requirements in for able-bodied adults between 19 and 64 with no dependents. They're saying you need to work at least 20 hours a week or 80 hours a month to continue your benefits. It's fair, I think, from a Republican perspective to say, and we think this polls well, actually, if you say, hey, do you support somebody, the idea of somebody that is getting government benefits need to work at least 20 hours a week to receive them, it's a fairly popular way to case the issue. That's what the bill does. There are exceptions for extraneous circumstances, pregnant women, those kinds of things. However, that messaging has not gotten through at all. It's just advertisements of cut Medicaid, cut Medicaid. Unless Republicans do a better job at voicing the truth about it, I think it could really hurt them in the midterms.
But if people do not subscribe to these work requirements, they could lose coverage.
Yes,
so that's
absolutely.
where the word cut comes from.
Yes, but also, and I don't want to dominate the conversation too much,
fine. You're welcome
but since
to.
Obamacare in 2010, that allowed all able-bodied adults to get onto Medicaid, and there's been 20 million able-bodied adults added to Medicaid since then. Only about 2 million children, so it's 10 times. The majority of funding now for Medicaid is to those able-bodied adults. The idea is if we motivate them or make them have to go back to work or get off the program and then ease out of it, we can then free up that money to be used for who it's meant to be used. That messaging has gone by the wayside. Unless we get back on message, I think it'll be a very effective issue for Democrats to beat up Republicans in the 26 midterms.
Sarah, is that a reasonable way to cut some Medicaid spending? I use the word cut, but I know what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Just to
Here we go again.
reallocate the Medicaid funding. Is that the way to do it? Will people lose coverage here who rely on this program to get health insurance?
Yeah, I hate to be like the principal, like in the big picture. Healthcare is a human right, and I think that anytime we make it harder for people to get access to healthcare, I think that's troubling for me. There are a lot of things you make sense. Your logic makes sense, and the work requirements totally seems like something that's reasonable. But it just worries me that we just keep chipping away at healthcare, and healthcare is something that Americans need. They constantly are going to debt by one injury or accident or something happens. Most people are not fully insured and have health care. And so for me, I think there are other areas we could be cutting and finding ways to pull back on our government spending. And I just don't want to be touching Medicaid in any way, including requirements.
I want to push you a little bit on where else do we cut? How do we cut if it's not this program, which pays for 75% or accounts for 75% of our national debt?
Space. I don't know.
Space.
I like there's a lot of different areas of our government where we're overspending.
If I could add there are no elected officials in Washington telling the truth about our debt picture, except for one, John Curtis. He's had the courage to do it. The two issues that we have to solve, or we're in a world of hurt, is Medicare and Social Security.
Okay.
We can do all this stuff about cutting and all these principled Republicans back in D.C. that I'm not voting for this omnibus bill and we need to cut spending. That is all periphery dollars. We will go under, the programs will be insolvent in 2034. And unless we solve those two programs, the rest of this is pointless. So to answer your question,
Medicare
and Social Security. Medicaid's a big part too.
Sure.
But really there's three big ones: Medicare, Social Security, and interest on our debt. Those will sink us. Under current law, if we do nothing through 2034, all Social Security benefits will get cut by about 20 to 25% for everybody. And so we can't let that happen. So unless we solve those 2 to 3 issues, none of this other stuff really matters.
Yeah, I think John Curtis is right in that. And I think it's interesting because this new big group of voters, so I'm going to switch it here a little bit. This big group of voters, these millennials, right? None of us have ever expected to get Social Security. We have paid into Social Security, but I think we've all looked at it going, we will never get those benefits. So it's an interesting piece with this new group of voters that are coming up as well.
It's not an easy problem to solve.
I was going to say, what are the cuts? Like, where do they come from? Or the reallocations, if you don't like that word.
If you saw what France did, they just tried to make it, you got to work another year or two. They literally had riots in the street.
Yeah.
I think we're a little different than France. But there's many things you can do.
Because they have free healthcare and a lot more paid vacation.
Yeah, exactly. There are a lot of different issues. But basically, you can extend the time you have to work. You can cut the benefits. You can also remove that cap. As people know, as your income goes up, you eventually stop paying Social Security tax above a certain amount of wages. You could take that cap off and just make it more of a means test. Because let's admit it, does someone who's very, very wealthy need full Social Security benefits? No. But do most Americans? Absolutely. So there's ways to massage it. There will be people that get hurt in that process. But the longer we wait, the worse it gets. If we wait till 2033, it's going to be a massive problem.
Well, we don't have all the answers today, but we will certainly debate all the issues, and we appreciate your insights today, Rusty Cannon and Sarah Reale. Thank you so much for your time today, for all of your valuable insights. We appreciate it. Oh my gosh, producer Peter, I didn't even introduce you once.
No.
I'm so sorry.
That is fine. There's a couple times I almost chipped in here, and I was like, no, they've got a good thing going.
You should have chipped in when Sarah's coughing fit happened.
Well, listen, I snuck off there for a minute. The mug is a producer contribution here.
Right.
Nice.
Cheers.
Thank you to our good friends at Good Things Utah for leaving that here for me.
Right.
But yeah, no. I promise to be more vocal. Really, I was trying to hide the fact that I wore this shirt, I think 3 episodes ago.
Okay.
I was going to say, I remember that shirt
noticed
last
that.
time I
Okay.
was here.
Viewers
It's the Rusty
notice
Cannon
that.
shirt.
But
Yes.
I'm glad it's happening to someone like Peter because often it's the women who get commented on their outfits, right? So when it happens to a man, I'm
absolutely.
always-
No.
yeah.
I'm happy to provide an opportunity for equality here.
Yeah.
Email me directly. At second thought, not putting it out on the program.
Listen, you don't totally look like you rolled out of bed today, but maybe just a little bit.
I'm going on a plane tomorrow, so it's
least he has a
the
shirt on.
adjacent vibes. Yeah,
He has a shirt on. It doesn't have buttons today.
Okay, that's
We
true.
usually
That's true.
compliment him when he wears buttons.
Well, that's the big difference.
All right.
yeah.
Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it. Come back and join us again soon.